If you hold any technology fund in your retirement account, you are already exposed to a war you have not been told about, not a war of soldiers. A war of ships, sensors, and a strip of ocean most Americans could not find on a map. Your exposure did not come from a decision you made. It came from an index. Every major fund that touches technology routes a piece of your money through a small set of companies that depend on one island, one shipping lane, and one factory complex that cannot be replicated anywhere else on Earth. You did not choose this concentration. The structure of passive investing chose it for you. Here is the fact underneath the headline. Naval activity around Taiwan has intensified sharply in recent months, with patrols and exercises tightening around the shipping lanes that carry semiconductor equipment and finished chips to the rest of the world. 90% of the world's most advanced chips are made on that island. Every artificial intelligence model you have heard of, every data center being built across the United States, depends on hardware that passes through those waters. This is not a hypothetical supply chain risk. It is the current one. Most investors assume this kind of risk is already priced in. The reasoning sounds sensible on the surface. Markets are efficient. Analysts cover this constantly. Surely, if the risk were real, prices would already reflect it. Nvidia trades near record highs. Chip stocks have soared through every one of these tension cycles for 3 years running. But that is not what the historical record shows about chokepoint risk. Chokepoint risk does not get priced in gradually. It gets ignored until the moment it cannot be ignored, and then it repriced in days, not months. This is not the first time a single geographic pinch point has held an entire industrial system hostage. In 1973, it happened with oil. The parallel is not decorative. It is structural, and it is exact enough to be uncomfortable. Here is the mechanism the viewer needs to understand before the history lands. The mechanism is single point dependency. Think of a mountain pass that every road in a region is forced to use. It does not matter how many towns sit on either side of that pass, how much traffic they generate, or how much capital has been invested in the roads leading up to it. If the pass closes, nothing moves. Wealth on one side of the mountain becomes irrelevant to wealth on the other side. The pass is the only variable that matters, and almost nobody who benefits from the roads ever thinks about the pass at all. The AI industry runs through exactly one pass. It works in 3 steps, and each step compounds the one before it. Step 1. Design happens broadly. American, European, and Asian companies design chips using tools from a handful of firms. This part of the chain looks distributed and healthy. Anyone studying it from a distance would conclude the industry is diversified. Step 2. Fabrication does not happen broadly. The most advanced chips, the ones under 3 nanometers, are manufactured almost exclusively in facilities clustered on one island. Design diversity collapses into manufacturing concentration the moment a chip needs to actually be built rather than drawn. Step 3. Distribution depends on shipping lanes that pass directly through contested waters. A chip designed in California and fabricated in Taiwan has to physically leave that island before it becomes a graphics processor in a data center in Virginia. There is no alternate route that carries the same volume at the same cost. Here is the number that makes this concrete. One company operating out of Taiwan produces roughly 90% of the world's most advanced logic chips, not most of the market, 90%. A rival attempting to replicate that manufacturing base from scratch would need a decade and hundreds of billions of dollars, and would still be years behind on process technology by the time it finished. This is the same shape the world faced in 1973, just wearing a different material. Oil moved through a small number of choke points controlled by a small number of producers, and when politics closed those points, industrial economies discovered how little of their strength was actually theirs. The last time this exact mechanism ran at this scale, it took less than a week for an entire global economy to discover how much of its strength it had quietly outsourced to a place it never worried about. In October of 1973, members of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries announced an embargo against nations that had supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. The United States was the primary target. Within days, oil that had been flowing freely through a handful of maritime choke points simply stopped reaching American ports at the volume the economy required. At the time, the surface narrative was reassuring. Oil was abundant. American industry had weathered supply disruptions before. Analysts believed prices might tick upward for a quarter or two before returning to normal, because that had generally been the pattern in prior decades. Domestic reserves, most economists argued, would smooth over any temporary interruption. The assumption was that geography was a footnote to the oil story, not the center of it. What was actually happening underneath told a different story. American industrial capacity had spent 2 decades building itself around the assumption of cheap, continuous, geographically simple oil access. Refineries, transportation networks, and manufacturing schedules were not designed with redundancy in mind. They were designed for efficiency, which meant they were designed with a single point of failure baked into every layer above it. The embargo did not create a new vulnerability. It revealed one that had existed the entire time, hidden by years of uninterrupted supply. The outcome was not gradual. Oil prices roughly quadrupled within 6 months. Gas lines stretched for blocks across American cities. The stock market fell by more than 40% from its high before the crisis eased, and the broader economic drag from the embargo helped tip the country into a recession that lasted into the following year. Companies that had built their entire cost structure on cheap oil saw margins collapse almost overnight. Investors who had treated energy supply as a solved problem learned in a matter of months exactly how unsolved it had always been. The parallel is not perfect, and it would be dishonest to claim otherwise. Oil in 1973 was a commodity extracted from the ground in multiple countries, whereas advanced semiconductor fabrication is a manufactured product concentrated by economics and physics rather than by geology alone. The embargo was also a deliberate political weapon wielded on purpose. While a disruption around Taiwan could emerge from miscalculation, accident, or blockade rather than a coordinated decision by a producer cartel. Reasonable people can disagree about how closely intention maps between the two events, but the mechanism underneath both stories is the same mechanism, regardless of intention. A modern economy built years of assumed efficiency on top of a single geographic point, and treated the absence of disruption as proof that disruption was unlikely. The asset is different. The concentration is the same. That is the thread worth pulling into the present. The chip industry today looks the way the oil industry looked in the summer of 1973, robust on the surface, quietly singular underneath, priced by investors as though the past will always stay open, because it always has, until the day it does not. The historical record does not promise this ends the same way. Patterns are not guarantees, and geography is not destiny. Taiwan is not the Persian Gulf, semiconductor fabrication is not crude extraction, and the political actors involved today are not the same actors who moved in 1973. It is possible that tensions ease, that shipping lanes stay open, and that the chip supply chain continues functioning exactly as it has for the past decade without interruption. History rhymes. It does not repeat on command. Here is where things stand right now, plainly. Naval patrols near Taiwan have increased in frequency and duration over recent months. Export control measures between major economies continue to tighten around advanced semiconductor equipment. The company producing the overwhelming majority of the world's most advanced chips has not meaningfully diversified its most critical production capacity outside the island, despite years of public discussion about doing exactly that. Every AI data center under construction across the world assumes, implicitly, that this arrangement holds. So here is the actual question underneath the number on your statement. When you look at your retirement account, the technology sector weighting listed there is not just a percentage. It is a bet placed on your behalf that a shipping lane thousands of miles away stays open indefinitely, held by people who are not thinking about that lane at all. The pass has stayed open for decades. So did the oil routes, until the week they did not. The mechanism does not care whether you understand it, it runs either way.